morning, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is that you are listening, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening. Date today is the 25th of December. Wow, impressed. Year of our Lord 2023. Welcome to yet another edition of the Coping Hour, hosted by Nicholas Hinkle. Merry Christmas, everybody. It's the holiday special of the Coping Hour. Nothing different out of the ordinary, right? This is a pre-recorded episode. I hope all of you have had a fantastic holiday season and are having a very, very Merry Christmas. Please do not do the thing where you kind of like taper off from your family with your little like candy cane full of M&Ms or Hershey Kisses, whatever bullshit you got in your stocking, and listen to the Coping Hour. Please spend time with your family today and then get back into the grind on a different day. But I got something I want to say really quick before we jump into today's evergreen holiday special. I'm going to be at the Pistons game on Tuesday, December 26th against the Brooklyn Nets. I will be in attendance. This is important for a few reasons. One, the Pistons, again, this is pre-recorded. As of technically tonight, while I'm recording this, they play Brooklyn on the road. I'm not watching that game. We're going to lose. Well, I'm gonna have to watch. I'm gonna have to watch because what if? You know what I mean? What if we do it? But you know what happened by now, right? You know what happened. I don't need to spend time on this. I'm hoping they lose that game, tie the all-time single-game season record for most consecutive losses at 26. So that way, when I go see them at home against Brooklyn on Tuesday, December 26th, there's like history on the line. I will witness something. Either the Pistons do it. And what does do it mean? Does that mean they break? I mean they win, right? Or they lose, and I get to partake in booing and sell the team chants, which sneaky. I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and I was like, I think it might break my heart too much. I don't think I would be able. I'm not going to be able to stomach that. If not like violence, but like if violence ensues and people start getting really hostile and aggressive, I'm not going to be able to participate. I just cannot watch that happen to my favorite basketball team in person. Although who knows? Maybe the dirty Shirleys are flowing. I've had enough drinks that I'm like, boo, tomato. I'm throwing T-shirts back onto the court and shit. Even the one I'm wearing. I'm not going to do that. LCA, please don't put me on a list and not let me into the game. I'd love to go to the game, which I am. December 26th against the Brooklyn Nets. I will be at LCA. It's my first Pistons game in over 2 years. The last time I went to one was in Los Angeles when the Pistons played both the Clippers and the Lakers. So I went to both of those games, like back to back. And then it's my first home Pistons game since February of 2020, 2 weeks before the season shut down and the world shut down. And, well, you know what? I don't know. It's been a while since I've told this story. A lot of you out there know this story. But here's some advice. The art of repeating yourself cannot be overstated because every day that you upload a new video or that you pump out a new episode of whatever it is that you're doing, the odds are that a new pair of ears is going to be listening. So one of your favorite takes, one of your favorite fastballs, your favorite stories, don't be embarrassed about repeating yourself every now and then. This story, let me make it as short as I can, and then we can jump into today's episode. December of 2019, my girlfriend gets us Pistons-Bucks tickets in Detroit. She knows, obviously, how much I love both teams. So it's like a waiting game thing. So it's like a for the future. Great. 3 months later, it's February 2020. We wake up in Chicago. It's like a 5-hour drive to Detroit, and I'm like the most sick I've ever been. We don't know what it is. It feels like food poisoning, but I'm like the most tired and the most like physically, like almost violently ill that I've ever been. Really weird feeling. We were staying at Motor City Casino. We get to the hotel, and it's not getting better. It's not getting better. Game time comes around. We take a shuttle. We're at the game. It's just not better. Like, I'm ruining the experience for both of us because of just how awful I felt physically. There was nothing I could have done. I can look back on it now and say, yeah, that's the most sick I've ever been, definitely. So we sit through the game, the entire game, in this packed arena. And I don't know if you've done a timeline thing here, putting some pieces together on when this was, February 2020. But we go home, and then 3 weeks later, we find out Rudy Gobert has COVID. Wait, but the Pistons just played the Jazz. Oh, wait, Christian Wood has COVID too? Oh, my God. Oh, no, Donovan Mitchell too? I legit have convinced myself Christian Wood was actually patient zero. Rudy Gobert was just the first one who got tested, which means that Christian Wood would have gotten it from me while I was at the Pistons-Bucks game, because in retrospect, I definitely had coronavirus before anybody actually knew what coronavirus was. And that's, by the way, not uncommon. The amount of people who can look back before we knew what COVID was and can be like, oh my God, that's definitely what that was, is astonishing, to be honest. But it was me. All right? I did it. I was the one who canceled the NBA season because I accidentally gave Christian Wood COVID in February of 2020. So I apologize for that. This is my first Pistons game at home since then. So I think we're slated for some magic. Going to get some nice seats. I don't get to go to Pistons games that often anymore living in Chicago. So anytime we do, it's like hey, we're doing this. You know what I mean? We're getting these tickets. So that's what I got for the little intro here today. The plan for the show. In the past, for an Evergreen episode, what we did was we reviewed my old videos. I thought that was a really fun trip down memory lane. I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think that we will one day do that again, because it was fun. Today, I want to kind of flip that a little bit. We are instead going to be looking at my old articles, because for those of you who don't know, at the same time that the wheels were kind of getting off the ground with my content, on camera at least, I was also just like really trying to break in any way that I could and just talk about basketball through as many mediums and as many channels as I possibly could. So I took up a little part-time on the side writing gig with Piston Powered. And then eventually that evolved into a site expert job with Nothing But Nets. So I was writing for these fan-sided sites for a while, and I think this is all about 4 or 5 years ago. I think it could be kind of funny to go back and look at some of my stories that I wrote. Sort of this proverbial golden age of NBA media, back when I was behind the ink and pen, you know what I mean? Or rather, I guess in this sense, the keyboard. Hitting my deadlines, hitting my word counts, making sure the SEO is all squared away, you know, really setting ourselves up for success here with the SEO. Yeah. That's what we're going to do. Don't need to add any more context. Happy holidays. Let's jump into the show. First up on the agenda, the Brooklyn Nets uniting Pariahs. This was actually the first story I ever wrote for Nothing But Nets. I got this gig the day that I moved to Chicago. It was like the day of our move-in. We like unload we drive like 4 hours, unload the U-Haul. You know, obviously I haven't set the internet up yet. And immediately run to a Starbucks just to have internet so I can write this story. Because when you're a site expert, I don't know how it is now, but when I was a site expert, dude, you had to put out like 20 to 25 stories a month, which is like just a brutal, brutal number to make some 19-year-old kid do. But I get it, man. The content world, the gears keep on turning. But yeah, let's do it, man. Let's jump right into it. The Brooklyn Nets uniting Pariahs. Just over a month has passed since the Brooklyn Nets pulled off the impossible. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and DeAndre Jordan are all residents of Kings County. While DeAndre may not fit within the paradigm that we're talking about here, Kevin and Kyrie most certainly do. They're both social pariahs. Now, that's not to say that the media has it out for them or that there's some agenda being pushed. However, in terms of being outcasts in the eyes of some in the public, there's definitely something to be said about recent events in both Brooklyn Nets players that both Brooklyn Nets players have endured. For the Nets, the facts are pretty simple. Kyrie has had commitment issues, and both him and Kevin have regularly clashed with the media. We're just over a month removed from learning about Kyrie, quote-unquote, ghosting the Boston Celtics. Nobody within the organization could seem to get a beat on where he was at mentally in terms of re-signing, even though all signs pointed to an exit. Now, obviously, the problem with this is that on an open practice on October 4th, 2018, Kyrie was asked about how important it is to see his jersey retired in Boston, to which he infamously replied, "If you guys will have me back, I plan on re-signing here." Now, for those of you who don't remember this, just to break the story, like the mold of what I'm doing here, that was real. I think it was literally an open practice in TD Garden, a couple thousand people there, and into a microphone, into a camera on the Jumbotron. "If you guys will have me back, I plan on re-signing here." So F's in the chat. Fast forward back to the email to late January. when Kyrie in some form backtracked on his initial promise. He reiterated his distaste for the free agent fiasco that happens every summer, saying it's treated as entertainment, and said that he planned on making the best decision for himself and for his career. Now, it's important to note that Kyrie is right in saying that between NBA media and general social media, that things get blown out of proportion on a consistent basis, and players often get their words twisted without proper context. However, despite still having his eyes set on a championship run for Boston, falling out of a honeymoon phase halfway through the season is never going to end well. It gave Boston fans a small taste of what Cavs fans went through just a year and a half prior, where Kyrie went to owner Dan Gilbert with a list of teams he'd like to be traded to, and Boston was one of the teams. Both fan bases were left wondering, why doesn't he want to be here? But Kyrie does want to be in Brooklyn. It was almost written in the stars, as he was an enormous Nets fan as a child when they were located in New Jersey. His favorite player was Jason Kidd, and ultimately, he has more reason to play in Brooklyn than any other franchise in the league. It feels relatively safe, assuming Nets fans won't suffer the same fate as Cavs or Celtics fans. Damn it, Nick. Damn it. I went this, the whole time I'm reading this, I'm like, I'm not doing too bad here. I'm looking, I might come out of this unscathed. And then I just had to add this in, that it feels relatively safe to assume that Nets fans won't suffer the same fate as Cavs or Celtics fans. I gotta tell you. When did it say I wrote this? August 9th, 2019. Let's check in on those Nets fans now. On December 25th, 2023. They have Ben Simmons. That's it. They have Ben Simmons. Pretty sure they're happy with the Cam Thomas experience, but they don't have any of the players we're talking about in here. They don't have James Harden. They have Cam Thomas, and they have Ben Simmons. I digress. Back to the email. As for Kevin Durant, he's obviously had his fair share of troubles just in these last 365 days, whether it's telling reporters directly to just grow up or asking them why he even needs to be talking to them. At the end of the day, Kevin wants to do one thing: play basketball and go home. And he wants to get these tweets off at this point, at his advanced age. He wants to play with good players. He doesn't have time to play with bad players anymore. And he wants to get these motherfucking tweets off. But this is New York. These are the Brooklyn Nets. The voices are louder here than anywhere else in the world. While both players, I say here, because I was trying to make it seem like I was part of that. Wow, I wasn't even on the team. That's crazy. Back to the email. While both players certainly have valid reasons for some of their issues with the media, at the end of the day, if there isn't some sort of a cohesive relationship between those two and the media, we may be heading down a dark path. It almost feels as if this is the beginning of a somewhat redemption tour for both Kyrie and Kevin Durant. They both have somewhat of a clean slate, seeing as they're new teammates in a rising franchise in the biggest market in the world. At the end of the day, championships silence everyone. And that was it. That was the end of the first story that I wrote for Nothing But Nets. Fumbled on the reading a little bit there, so I apologize. Really, the only thing I think that messed me up was the thing I said about Nets fans won't suffer the same fate as Cavs or Celtics fans. I think maybe there's a chance they got their hearts ripped out even harder once the Harden thing happened. And don't worry, we're not about to do 10 minutes, revisiting that whole thing, because that's what everybody likes to do, and we don't like to do what everybody likes to do around here. That sounded really contrarian and douchey. I don't even mean it like that. I do want to pat myself on the back a little bit for immediately having the presence of mind to snipe this DeAndre Jordan thing and be like, he is not on the team. He's not. Honestly, even to the point that Kyrie made right here, he reiterated his distaste for the free agent fiasco that happens every summer, saying it's treated as entertainment. He's right about that. I don't remember the quote, but if I wrote it, he probably did say it. He's right, because the spectacle that it has to turn into, even at this point in his career, DeAndre Jordan was not really seen as like this rim-running world eater. You know what I mean? And DeAndre Jordan is a guy who a lot of us, like the impact that he had on our childhood with a lot of that Lob City stuff, can't be overstated. And on the strength of that alone, I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for DeAndre Jordan, 100%. But he was never on the team. Wasn't he getting like healthy DNPs almost immediately? This like clean sweep narrative, or this like headline that they tried to push so desperately involving Kevin Durant, involving Kyrie Irving, and DeAndre Jordan was crazy, because you could have just ended at KD and Kyrie. And I get it. We were still kind of coming out of that era, the Big Three era, where that was how, like, championship teams were built. It was like, who can get the best 3 guys? You know what I mean? Who can pull off the best, like, top 3 players in the league? And I think because we were sort of ending that era and entering a different one, this was kind of sort of the last bastion of that major, like, 3 players coming in. So that'll always be kind of funny to look back on, the clean sweep and DeAndre Jordan being included in there. So other than that, nothing crazy. I didn't say anything too crazy. Let's go to the next one. Let's do another Nets story really quick, only because looks like I might be onto something here with where this take is going. How the Brooklyn Nets have peak value in the NBA, also from August of 2019. And then maybe we'll jump back into some Pistons ones. This is going to be about Jarrett Allen. When you think of the players with the best value in the league, Jarrett Allen of the Brooklyn Nets has to come to mind at just $2.3 million this season, averaging 11 points and 8.5 rebounds per game. It's not too much of a stretch to say that he provides more than he gets paid for. The question is pretty simple: who has the best value in the league? You think of Pascal Siakam, the reigning most improved player of the year, at just $2.3 million. You think Brook Lopez in 18-19, completely transcending his game and hitting more three-pointers than any other player over 7 feet tall in the history of the NBA, making only $3.3 million. Do the Brooklyn Nets have anyone that may fit the criteria here? The answer is yes. While the aforementioned Pascal Siakam could be the choice, it's entirely conceivable that at some point next season, we're talking about Jarrett Allen as the guy who deserves the next big contract, as somebody who consistently improved on his rim protection as the previous season progressed. Furthermore, Jarrett is also someone who saw an increase in minutes played, points per game, rebounds per game, and a slight increase in blocks per game from his rookie season. So where's the value at? In just his second season, Jarrett grew exponentially as a rim protector and as an inside scorer, as he helped Brooklyn make the playoffs for the first time in 4 seasons. In 2019, so what would this have been? Was this the D'Lo Nets? Had to have been, right? Speaking more towards that, he started all 80 games that he played for the Nets and recorded a double-double in 24 of them, with his best stat line coming on November 17th at home against the Clippers, posting 24 and 11, shooting 61.5% from the field and 90% from the line. Finishing the season with a field goal percentage of 59%, 8th best in the league, Jarrett proved what was mentioned before, that he can finish at the rim. However, what even just a small glimpse at his stats will tell you is that he did have an incredibly difficult time scoring outside of the paint, shooting 6 for 45 from 3 and just 2.1% from it. Who cares? So if hearing that is indicative of anything, here's what it means. It means that he doesn't... What? Jarrett Allen is a near 7-footer attempting to space the floor, something that is held in high value in today's game. If he begins to see any form of improvement doing so, forget all defensive teams. We're talking about all-star appearances. Being a one-dimensional big man in modern basketball will seldom find you success, so the fact that the Brooklyn Nets have a 6'11" ball of clay that they're still attempting to mold should be something that is terrifying for the rest of the NBA. Whether or not he starts for Brooklyn next season over DeAndre Jordan, then parenthetically I said, which for all intents and purposes, he should. Nice. Another DeAndre Jordan zag there by me. I love it. Nets fans can rest easy knowing that they have one of the best sixth men players in the league coming off of the bench for them. Jarrett Allen truly has the potential to be a perennial all-star. A lot of word salading going on here in these stories. And that's it. That's the article. Really quick hitter. Yeah, I was really fixated because he is one of those players that I am convinced, like, real life can shoot threes, but I guess we have this here. If you really look at the game, like, he doesn't, though. That's not a thing that he does. It's just really never been a thing that he does. Sorry if this is... I'm looking at the wrong thing. Sorry if this is actually not that interesting. I'm literally pulling up Basketball Reference right now, so this is kind of for just the video part of the podcast. Yeah, man, it's just not a thing that he does, and I was really convinced that it was going to be. You know what I'll say about Jarrett Allen, though, is... First of all, when the James Harden trade happened, I think the NBA hipster take was Jarrett Allen going to Cleveland is the most important part of this trade. That's the part that's actually interesting to me because that is the only piece of this that actually feels sustainable. And guess what? It has been. The best way that I can describe Jarrett Allen is he plays exactly the way that I've always wanted Marvin Bagley to play. Where it's like, yeah, you can post if you need to. You can throw a little, you can do one of those little spins. You can throw an elbow into somebody if you need to. Do a little jab or two. Use the glass. But I think he's at his best. Jarrett Allen is at his best, and again, so is Marvin Bagley, when you feed them the ball when they're already moving downhill. And I don't mean downhill on some like athletic wing shit where they string together 2 or 3 dribbles on their way to the rack and then they do some up and under shit. I'm talking about just mass. Like sheer mass that Jarrett Allen has, that when he's going downhill and you give him that dump off, that trailer pass, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do. You can try to go up vertically. You can try to, do whatever, get a chart, do whatever you need to do. But he's going to draw the and one. He's probably going to finish through the contact again because it's mass. I think that's when Marvin Bagley historically has been at his best, not even just with Detroit, but if you go back and look at Sacramento. So he's one of those players truly that the value is sometimes so hard to quantify because when you have a guy as big as he is who can block as many shots as he does, we've seen it, man. When Evan Mobley is healthy and when he is playing with Jarrett Allen, I actually, what's funny is that's actually something I've never looked into is like what their numbers look like on and off the court together. I guess I have Basketball Reference open. I could look into that, but it would probably take me a minute to figure out exactly how to filter that. Yeah, all right. Let's move on to a Pistons story. Now, this one's going to be a little bit lamer of a trip down memory lane, but I haven't read these, I'm sure you can imagine, in over 3 years. So this could be fun. The Detroit Pistons select Killian Hayes in the 2020 NBA draft. So we're going to be reading, I guess, essentially my first thoughts. I don't know if I'm going to do some sort of a scouting report on here. I guess we'll see. What did I think at the time that we drafted Killian Hayes? I can tell you right now, I was pretty excited. Let's see. The Detroit Pistons select Killian Hayes in the 2020 NBA draft. The Detroit Pistons have done it. They drafted the player that the fan base has been clamoring over for months now. With the 7th pick in the NBA draft, they selected Killian Hayes. It had been largely speculated that Detroit would select either Florida State's Patrick Williams or Iowa State's Tyrese Halliburton. After Williams went 4th to the Chicago Bulls, it came down to Halliburton or Hayes. I'm going to break the article immediately for a second. Patrick Williams going 4th to Chicago in real time was bananas. It was crazy. I think a lot of people had chalked Deni Avdija going that early. And that was truly the moment that we knew we were getting Killian, because there was also kind of this like, but what if they go after a guard that we were worried about. That was, I will never forget that truly jaw-dropping moment of like, oh my God. Back to the article. Either would have been a perfectly acceptable pick. Oh, would Tyrese Halliburton have been an acceptable pick if it came down to Tyrese Halliburton and Killian Hayes? Either would have been a good pick. Oh, thanks, Nick. But fans have been begging for Hayes ever since the lottery concluded back in August. Killian is highly touted for his elite court vision and his playmaking ability. The Pistons were in desperate need of a point guard, and by the approximation of some, they got the best one in the entire draft. It's also worth noting that Hayes is close friends with Sekou Doumbouya, Detroit's draft pick from just a season ago. The two had been communicating over the last few months trying to get Hayes prepared for the NBA. The duo has appropriately been anointed the French Revolution, and it has officially arrived. Hayes is a gifted offensive talent. He's also a pesky defender, and his sheer quickness allows him to jump passing lanes with tremendous ease. As the Pistons hope to begin their rebuild, Hayes is an exceptional first building block, as an essential piece of the puzzle has essentially been placed. While we were initially expecting this draft to be Detroit's only pick of the night, they've also acquired the 16th pick in the draft after completing a trade with the Houston Rockets just before the draft was underway. Troy Weaver has made his first selection as the Pistons general manager, and it was an absolute home run. While we're on this, actually, I'll do a quick few notes on this. One, I've talked about it ad nauseum at this point that while the people who wanted Tyrese Halliburton in Pistons land, of course they existed. There were times when I was one of them. Killian was always the consensus, and that's who people wanted. By the approximation of some, the best point guard in the entire draft, just name Kevin O'Connor, Nick. Just name drop KOC. It's okay. I'm not mad at you, Kevin. I'm still not mad at you for this. You know that. We've talked about it. But, that's who it was. Pistons fans got all excited because an important guy that we listened to from The Ringer, a guy who knows stuff, was saying that the guy that we're going to draft is the best player. We were really excited. Didn't end up happening, but, whatever. Let's keep this going and just read. Let's do the Isaiah Stewart one. I'm not going to do the Sadiq one, but I think maybe this could be fun. So the Detroit Pistons select Isaiah Stewart. After acquiring an additional first-round pick in this year's draft via Houston, the Detroit Pistons used the 16th pick to select Isaiah Stewart. The center out of Washington could prove to be a strong addition to a depleted Pistons front court. As it stands, the Detroit Pistons will be going into next season with Christian Wood and Thon Maker, if both are retained. They were not, and Justin Patton up front. Justin Patton also, I don't even think, made the opening night roster. He was a training camp, 10-day. This move bolsters their depth. Stewart was widely considered the third best big man in this class, trailing only James Wiseman and Onyeka Okongwu, both of whom were selected inside of the top 10, one of whom is also on the Pistons now. Stewart is highly touted for his ability to bully defenders in isolation around the rim. His incredibly efficient post play will be a solid plus to a Pistons team who desperately needed to add size. He is neither an efficient post player or quote-unquote size. I would say he's actually almost famously undersized for his position. Additionally, Stewart is a strong pick-and-roll option. There it is, and a pick-and-pop. Paired alongside either Derrick Rose or newly drafted Killian Hayes, Detroit will have some fun scoring options to explore. His ability to create and finish through contact at the rim is incredibly refreshing to see, as he's able to keep his body under control while finishing. Also not true at all. I would say Isaiah Stewart, very famously, probably one of the most flailing guys that we have on the team. It's not his fault. It's just what he does. I'm not mad at him for it, but this is wrong. Isaiah Stewart was the Pac-12's leading freshman scorer and rebounder at 17 points and 9 rebounds per game. Playing in one of college's most premier and competitive conferences, the experience could bode well at the next level. He also set a school record at Washington, becoming the new leading freshman rebounder in school history with 281 and all-time shot blocker with 66. Is that all-time or is that, I didn't word this very well. I'm assuming that has to actually be in a single season, right? Play 30 games, 66 blocks, 2 a game. I'm going to assume that's in a single season. So good on you, Isaiah Stewart. Boy, did I not nail this at all. Did I not nail this literally? I don't agree with most of this. I'm not even acknowledging the part where I said, at least we have Christian Wood and Thon Maker. We didn't, though. I don't even think, did Derrick? Yeah, I think Derrick lasted until, the deadline. Not even. I think he lasted until January, and then we traded him back to the Knicks, right? That's how that ended up going. I'd have to go back and look. This one was interesting. Do I want to look at the Saddiq Bey one? Do I dare? The old core 4. Let's go through it super quick. Let's go through my Saddiq Bey. We just drafted him recap really, really quick. Okay, the Detroit Pistons, because this was such a monumental night, is the truth. This night really, it's interesting to look back on it now because this is about 3 years ago. This really did feel like the most consequential night outside of, winning a championship that the Pistons had literally ever had. We had never seen a GM swing this hard in the draft, going after 3 essentially lottery picks. Unprecedented as a Pistons fan. The Detroit Pistons stayed active on the trade market tonight, involving themselves in a 3-team trade with the Brooklyn Nets and the Los Angeles Clippers. Luke Kennard was sent to the Clippers, and in exchange, Detroit received the 19th pick in the draft. With this, they selected Saddiq Bey out of Villanova, largely hailed as one of the purest shooters in the entire class. The Pistons hit a home run here. Lots of home runs. I think that's 3 that I said we've hit. He quickly emerged as one of the most efficient scorers in the country last season, shooting an absurd 45% from three-point range. With this trade, the Pistons lose an emerging perimeter threat with a new one to start from scratch. It's becoming increasingly clear that Troy Weaver wants a clean slate with his own players. Bey was an elite catch-and-shoot talent in college, and it's highly expected to translate at the next level. He has a quick trigger and shows no tentativeness to shoot. He is more than willing to let it fly. Bey has grown to show, grower, not a shower, that he is willing to use all 6'8" of his frame to take advantage of the mismatches and drive them to the basket. His offensive upside is more or less what any team needs to thrive. See, this is just like basketball, like you're just saying the buzzwords. He's a playmaker for himself, not so much for others. Very true. A lot of sidesteps in his game. He's also incredibly smart with the ball in his hands, possessing just a 1.6 to 1 assist-to-turnover ratio last season. That's not that great. It's fine. Oh, that's actually not, wait a minute. Did I not understand how this stat worked? He's also incredibly smart with the ball in his hands, possessing just a 1.6 to 1 assist to turnover. I clearly did not understand how that stat worked because that's not indicative of him being quote unquote incredibly smart, a 1.61 assist to turnover ratio. Just means he doesn't fucking pass the ball. Ultimately, this pick, which is fine. Ultimately, this pick proved that Weaver is not messing around. He's made an absolutely exceptional statement in his first draft with Detroit. Everything that could have gone right has, and then some. So there you go. Even these last couple sentences, I think, sum it up pretty perfectly. Truly how we were feeling in that moment. So I don't have anything to add here. Saddiq Bey, quite literally not on the team anymore. To a good home. Miss you, buddy. Would much rather have you than James Wiseman. I'm not one of the people who's actually going to get upset about this because who cares at this point? We lost him. On to the next one. This isn't even the first time that I've read a headline and been like, there's like a typo here. Should Detroit Piston fan feel comfortable with the idea of losing? Should be fans. Should Detroit Pistons fans feel comfortable with the idea of losing? From 2019. Boy, I only saw the headline here and was like, I literally need to click. I need to read this. We need to see what's going on in here. Should we be feeling comfortable with the idea of losing from 4 years ago? With the season heading in a direction that no one saw coming, time really is a flat fucking circle, isn't it? When should Detroit Pistons fans accept what this team is? Yeah, when should we, guys? Is it 25 in a row? Is it 26 in a row? It's a rather arbitrary... Back to the email. I'm sorry. Ooh, Freudian slip. Back to the article. It's a rather arbitrary thing to even profess, but if the Detroit Pistons are going to continue to lose games, at some point, should the fans become content with that? With a franchise that for the last decade has had trouble looking ahead to the future and instead focusing all their time on the present, being forced into a rebuild may not be such a bad thing. After all, it's overdue. As it stands, the Pistons are currently sitting on a 12-22 record and have lost 8 of their last 10 games. Oh, fucking no. With the Lakers and Clippers on the horizon within the next 3 games, in all likelihood, that record is going to continue to drop. With the way this season has gone with Detroit, they've played a majority of these last few months with a heavily depleted roster. Injuries continue to pile up, which has played a major role in the woes. The silver lining to this, if one can be found, is that it's forced some of the Pistons' younger players into elevated roles. Svi Mykhailiuk is a prime example. Someone who was expecting to see some of his time off the bench, but was not expected to play 24 minutes per game like he has in his last 6 outings. Svi is a guy who steps up. I would say he's still that way, but especially his time in Detroit. Shout out to my Ukrainian brother, Svi. Now, I'm not Ukrainian, but, you know, in spirit, I guess. I'm in lockstep with my Ukrainian brother, Svi Mykhailiuk. Bruce Brown has been bouncing back and forth between shooting guard and his new role as one of Detroit's point guards. We actually love to talk about that on the show. Doing this has opened up an interesting wrinkle in his versatility and playmaking ability. His defense is ever improving, and even his three-point shot is slowly starting to fall more consistently. I probably should have added only from the corner, because Bruce Brown can literally only shoot threes from the corner. That's still true. Prior to his injury, even Luke Kennard was beginning to look noticeably more confident with the ball in his hands, and one can assume he's been given the green light to shoot whenever he feels comfortable. His development is more or less on par with fan expectations, but the others may be slightly quicker than anticipated. So, at some point, evaluating the current field of talent in the league versus what the product is currently in Detroit, is it really the worst thing in the world if this team is forced to take a direction that they aren't comfortable taking? No, it isn't. Thank you, Past Nick. Although this upcoming draft class currently feels slightly underwhelming, it was the class that we just read, the Killian, Isaiah Stewart, Saddiq Bey, Wiseman, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball. So I don't know what I was talking about. It's undoubtedly front-loaded with some interesting prospects at the point guard position, something that Detroit would likely utilize with their first-round pick. It's never going to necessarily be fun watching a team begin to tank, but when it's inadvertently happening to begin with due to a lack of ability to even compete, what's the difference? If nothing else, fans can find solace in the fact that they have a chance to secure a top 10 draft pick. The current front office in Detroit has done a commendable job with their drafting in their short tenure. In retrospect, they really didn't at all. They literally did nothing at all. At the end of the day, regardless of how many injuries are currently affecting the Pistons, it feels as if the decision should be clear to mail it in this season and, at the very least, try to retool for next season. Blake Griffin's window is beginning to close, so that doesn't leave much time to keep messing around. Detroit needs a fresh start, and whether or not they accept it willingly, it may arrive all the same. Shout out to Thanos. Blake Windows. Blake Griffin's window beginning to close on, December 31st, 2019. Yeah, we were there, by the way. It was maybe cracked. Cracked open, because he did have some good games for Brooklyn, honestly. But it was pretty much closed at this point. The truth here is, how did I word this? What's the difference if nothing else? Oh, okay. But when you're losing inadvertently, like when you're inadvertently tanking because you literally just don't have enough guys that can compete, like what's the difference? That was Detroit in a nutshell for the longest time before we finally stopped letting Ed Stefanski run the team. Not that it was his fault. And we hired Troy. Again, Troy is going to lose his job, but if nothing else, at least he kind of got us on this more structured timeline, which is what we had been waiting for. And we are still on that structured timeline, and I trust that the next GM will continue to do that. We are building things, quote unquote, the right way. And what I mean by that is we're not doing what we had done in the past, which is this. I mentioned it here. Whoa, what's this? What's going on here? I mentioned, retooling on the fly and shit, like it doesn't work. Like that's what Tom would prefer to do. Tom Gore's the owner. So I think, yes, past Nick, Detroit Pistons fans probably do feel comfortable with the idea of losing. Let's move on. Let's wrap up on one that means a lot to me. Detroit Pistons Blake Griffin, honorary MVP. Again, no fucking idea what's going on with some of these titles. Like this actually was only like the 5th story I ever wrote from June 25th, 2019. So I was still very raw. I was very fresh. But the reason this is so special to me is because I almost didn't write this. And then I did while the NBA awards were on. I was just kind of passively doing it. And then the next day, ESPN Radio reached out to me, and some of their hosts in like Ohio had read the story, and they're like, we want to talk to this guy. It was awesome. I ended up doing their show like 3 or 4 more times because I had so much fun with them. So it's because of this, it really kind of put me on an interesting trajectory. So let's jump into it. Averaging 24.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 5.5 assists per game, Blake Griffin was the quintessential embodiment of the Detroit Pistons this season. The NBA, there you go. I was watching the NBA awards. The NBA awards have officially concluded. Giannis Antetokounmpo has won the NBA MVP award. Now, at the end of the day, there's going to be a large consensus that this is in total agreement. Well, that's what a consensus means, that he deserved this award. You'll have your skeptics here and there, but at 20, I'm not going to read these. With Giannis's line and leading your team to a 60-win season, he's pretty deserving. Now, with that being said, there is something to be said for players in smaller markets on teams struggling to find identities, the unsung players who battle night in and night out while receiving a fraction of the recognition. Blake Griffin is your honorary MVP. Averaging 24, I just read all this. Griffin was the quintessential embodiment of a Detroit Piston this season, putting his body on the floor, attacking the basket, and even transcending his game with an elevated perimeter shot. That's underselling it. It wasn't just an elevated perimeter shot. Like, he totally reimagined his 3-ball, and like he shot more of them. He made more of them. He was more efficient. We don't need this ad in here. This is crazy. Back to the article. Blake ranked within the top 10 of all of the following categories to end the season among forwards. Points per game, field goals made/attempted, three-pointers made/attempted, free throws made/attempted, and assists. Things went right for Blake this season as he proved a countless amount of people wrong who doubted his athleticism and his ability to stay healthy for an entire season. That's true. Blake appeared in 75 games this season, which was his most since the 13-14 season. Backtracking to an earlier point, the transcendence of Blake's perimeter shot was truly marvelous this year. Talk your shit, Nick. Shooting 36.2% from beyond the arc on 7 attempts per game is quite insane for a guy who just 3 seasons ago hadn't attempted more than half of an attempt per game. The unfortunate thing about this honorary MVP label is that it's nothing more than that. Giannis proved that you don't have to necessarily be in a big market for franchises to receive the recognition that you deserve, but you do have to win ball games. It seems fair to assess the situation. It seems fair to assess the situation the way that it is. Had the Detroit Pistons been able to climb up to a 4 seed or higher in the Eastern Conference, Blake would have received more attention in the MVP conversation. Detroit is having a terrific offseason so far with the prioritization of wing depth. With free agency looming, a backup point guard and center are of the utmost importance. Individual accolades are seldom the route of motivation for NBA players, but with the right team around him, Blake Griffin has tremendous odds at gunning for an MVP. He's a proven leader, a league best in terms of top teammates. Blake adopting the point forward position for the Detroit Pistons has proven to be the difference in wins and losses. Blake is a star. He just needs a sky to shine in. Shut up. Oh, that was so corny. Oh, my God. No, I agree with this. I mean, look, if the Pistons had gotten a 4 seed that year, I mean, yeah, we're talking about it like the same way that we like to talk about, you know, when DeMar DeRozan with the Bulls was getting some MVP buzz because it was like a team that wasn't really supposed to be that good, but like was supposed to be good. Well, they actually were, and it was almost exclusively on the back of him. That's what it was for Blake during his time in Detroit. I don't really need to go into a whole nother spiel about this because I've spoken fucking ad nauseum about how good Blake was that year and how it's the second best basketball player I've ever been alive for. So, yeah, man, it means a lot to me, you know, the same way that it did when we went back and watched some of my older videos, to sort of go down this lane. And in some way, a lot of these stories kind of felt the same. But I really did believe this sentiment that we hadn't seen, you know, the line that I like to say the most is that the reason that Blake Griffin was never good again after this season was because he literally destroyed his body for us. He did. The reason that he can't like walk anymore is because of us. So yeah, I think in retrospect, if the NBA is in the business of doing these like consolation MVPs, these like makeup MVPs, which they have done in the past, whether you want to fucking admit it or not, I'm looking at you, James Harden. Gotta give Blake an MVP. Gotta give him an MVP, and we gotta get him also like actually on a roster first. That's what we have to do. Someone has to sign Blake Griffin. Well, that's going to be it today, folks. Kind of honestly made me feel the exact same as I did after we watched all those videos, where I was just kind of like sad, where I was just kind of like, man, like that was so long ago. It was such a crucial part of like my journey and my history, you know, my personal lore. It's just weird to revisit some of those stories and also know like where I was at mentally and what was literally happening in my life while I was writing those stories. It's really weird to look back on. But that's today's show. So again, happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas. We'll be back on Friday with a normal episode. Should be fine in that department. And again, I will be at the Pistons-Nets game. So if you're there, chime in. Let me know in the comments. You can shoot me an email. I'm not really the type of guy to like coordinate like, oh, you're going to be at this part of the arena at the beginning of the first quarter. I'm not that kind of guy. I've had people try to do it before, and I've had to very politely explain that if you see me, you see me. I really want to wear the Buffs. I want to wear the Buffs so bad because we have good seats. But I just don't want to be corny. But if we win, I'm going to want to wear the Buffs. Also, if I wear the Buffs, Cade won't be able to look at me and immediately remember who I am. And I have this thing in my head that Cade's going to see me and he's going to like climb over because we're in the 4th row. He's going to climb over a few seats, tell some people to get the fuck out of his way just so that he can dap me up, right? That's what's going on in my head. So if anything short of that happens, I will be sure to let you guys know about it the next time that you hear from me on the Coping Hour hosted by Nicholas Hinkle. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, shorter episode today, but it's Christmas and you shouldn't be listening to me anyways. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave a like. Be sure to subscribe. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can also leave 5 stars. Truly, truly from the bottom of my heart, hope that everybody is having an amazing holidays. Truly, I do. I will catch you guys
Computers now
in the
have
next
primary
one.
control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.